Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Dave Albert. In this show, I talk about technology, building a company as a CTO and co-founder, and have guests to discuss their roles in technology and entrepreneurship. Today, we're joined by Francis Smyth, Agile coach at ClaimVantage, MBA candidate at TCD, and a speaker at the Ali conference. Thanks so much for joining us, Fran.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
It's a pleasure. So can you tell us a little bit about, your background, yourself, and what you do?
Sure. Well, I am currently an Agile coach. My title just recently changed. I was a Scrum Master before then, without needing to change my title or anything like that. I have only done that recently, but essentially I've been acting as an Agile coach up until this point. But in the past, I've acted as a Scrum Master. And like a lot of people, I sort of fell into this when my company at the time adopted Scrum and rolled that out internally. And it really just clicked with me. And I said, this is what I've been wanting to do. And this is the answer to everything. I had been interested in project management before that, and it never really went anywhere because I didn't fully buy into it that, you could plan that far out ahead and then just execute on a pre-organized plan and end up at the right destination. I think there's trouble with that. It's never going to go very well. And you need an adaptive method like Agile or one of the Agile methodologies and frameworks to work within, or to have some sort of a hybrid mix and match between the two is my current thinking. So my current, I'm always expanding my my understanding of everything. And right now I'm actually taking an MBA course, and that's opening new doors as well for me. So my thinking and my thoughts continually go in waves, waves of creation of ideas and then destruction of those ideas when they don't really pan out. So I'm learning every day, every single day. And right now I'm working, I'm actually just working with a small, medium enterprise, and they claim to have adopted Agile a couple of years ago, didn't really do anything. They went through the motions, and we've made a number of changes since I got there. So that's a pretty good start anyway.
Yeah, that's a kind of a lean approach to your own thought processes, I guess. That's what it sounds like. Hypothesis, test, learn, adapt.
It probably is, and it's probably why it calls to me so much. I never feel like I have the right answer to anything because of that. So I only know what I know today and what I believe today, but that can change if new information comes up.
Well, I like to say one of the worst programmers I've ever seen is myself 6 months ago. And I think that every 6 months. So if you haven't grown to think that your past self was uninformed, then you haven't grown enough yourself.
That is the best way of putting it that I've ever heard. I'd be a lot meaner to myself.
I may be a little too mean to myself, but
yeah, exactly. That's it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can only really know what you know today, and no one person can know everything. So we can only try out what we can see. And I mean, Scrum itself has only really been out there since 2001, and only really in Ireland being adopted in the last number of years, on a general scale. So, it's something that is relatively new to everybody. And the work that it was originally defined to do, we're kind of picking and at that, and we're trying to make it to do to work in other areas that it wasn't originally intended to do, not outright anyway. It was originally constrained to software, and over the years has been expanded out into other areas like marketing, and even our sales team is using Kanban. Now they haven't been told that it's called Kanban, but they're using Kanban. So as soon as you start telling people the words for things, they tend to think, oh, I'm getting confused, or I need to learn a new thing. So, it's a lot of people are kind of the crux of everything, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what type of teams, what size teams do you normally work with?
So my teams are quite small, actually. I'd like to say 5 at the moment, and they're quite small. So 4 of them are actually facing our customers, and they're our services teams, professional services, and one is our R&D team. So they're working on the core product itself and trying to upgrade all of the functionality within that, while also balancing our customer demands and our customer asks as well. So they've got their own set of problems, and the professional services side has their own set of problems. So it kind of depends on the set of people that are involved, the work that's involved, and then the interplay between all of those things.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was wondering is, when is this team not ready to learn to be more formally agile? Does that question make sense?
I have had and still have teams that aren't ready to be teams. They aren't ready to be called teams. So when I actually first started in my company, we had about 16 developers, and everybody was working individually. And a developer, you like to get your head down, you write your couple of classes, your couple of methods, and you get out the door at the end of the day, and you don't tend to want to talk much to other people unless somebody's got an issue. So it's very individual, and especially when you get more senior developers as well who can work like that and who can take that initiative on their own. So to me, it'd be less around what a team who isn't ready to be agile. I think I've seen little resistance from anyone to being agile, but for people to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then also to work as a team. Those 3 pieces, I mean, we tend to do 2 of them. We tend to roll out Scrum in particular. We roll out the methodology, the values, but getting people to work as a team and to want to work as a team, I think is much more difficult than getting them to want to adopt something that's going to make their lives easier.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you've got to get the purpose and the internal motivations fired up in people to move forward.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And it's difficult. It's not often easy to see that people aren't behaving as a team. I don't know if you know the difference between a team and just a group of people. So what we originally had when we set up our teams were really just groups of people who were assigned to the same customers and the same code bases, but they didn't really, until very recently, and this is a year later, it took that long, they didn't really work together. They helped each other, but they didn't feel like they had support of each other per se, or that they even needed that support. And it actually took something along the lines of a crisis, a good crisis, but a lot of pressure and a lot of tension of a bad situation in a new customer to make them want to do that.
How can you accelerate the formation of the team bond within the group of people other than a crisis?
I haven't seen a way to do so. I think if you're starting from a situation where people have either come from teams or are used to working in teams, or used to working in Scrum teams in particular, they've seen it done or they've experienced it before, I think it's a little bit easier for people to understand. But if you've got people who have engineers who've maybe wanted to or had to work alone for an awful long time, and the only interaction with somebody else was when you were working on a similar piece of area of the code or something similar to that, or you needed to refactor somebody else's code, they're the only real points at which the engineers that I'd worked with had really overlapped in the areas that they needed to do their work in. When we came to doing our teamwork, splitting up the tasks as well wasn't something that was, natural to them. It wasn't something that they'd ever had to do before, or even been asked to do before. So trying to help people understand what that was about and why they should do it was extremely difficult, actually. So this is why I think the will keep saying as well that the people are kind of the hardest part of really anything, and especially rolling out any new system or new structure or um, new methodologies like Scrum and like Agile. So we actually, even in a small company like mine, when I joined my company, it was only 30 or 32 people or something like that, and we're at 86 now, 2 years
wow.
later, which is kind of good growth for them because they spent the prior 12 years just with the same number of people, essentially. And you have to undo 12 years worth of habits that have been built up by not having teams, not having, someone else to call upon, and not having the volume of people that you get in a medium or large company.
Mm-hmm.
So you're working within those constraints where everybody just had to get their own piece of the pie done, and whatever needed doing had to get done. So switching all of that out and switching people to working in a different way of working and breaking those habits took that long of a time. So I think if you've got the buy-in and you've got the understanding of what teamwork is and why you would do it and why it is necessary and why it will help you actually do your job and help the company, be able to process more tickets or whatever it is that you're trying to do, you can build things, you can build more things, you can build faster things, and you can build them in a better way by working together like that. So trying to change habits of sitting in a room, we literally had one of our meeting rooms was actually a closet, and it was also our server room at that stage. So, I think if anybody is working in a startup, you would also have that understanding. It was startup, and it was startup for about 10, 12 years. So we're only really on the uptick of a hockey stick, and it's starting to take off now. So in the time that I came in, they were still in that crossover point between startup and investing in the numbers of people that would be required to grow, but also waiting for that growth to actually appear. So planning for growth, being ready for growth, and then actually having the people ready for that growth as well was quite a difficult balancing act to maintain. And this is something that I think a lot of companies will go through. I think I'd like to say it's almost easier if you're making a product that nobody outside of the company really has much of a say in. Like, you do have customers who have a say, who are going to buy it, who are going to be purchasers of your product. But at the startup stage, you're reacting to that. You take in all of the requests. You try and execute as many of those as you possibly can to create the product that can sell to the most amount of people. Then you reach the stage that my particular company's at, and you realize that you've built a Frankenstein product over the years because there's no stop point. In Agile, you've got this person, you've got your product owner, they own the product and they own where it's going. And there was none of that. There was no stop point. So my own personal take on it is, if you are going to have Agile in your company, start off Agile, because it will make things easier for you when you get to the stage that we're at.
Yeah, that's something that I've tried all along to find the right flow for our team. When you're starting with a product, though, if your users are extremely conservative, like doctors who are our core audience, it's very hard to put out a product that does not have a good usable set of polished features. And we've consistently tried to figure out the right way to do it. So even trying to work agile in an agile fashion, we're still, obviously there's a large amount of work that goes into that first release version. Any insights on how someone might avoid
Yeah.
the mistakes we've made in the past and maybe we'll make again. Hopefully
I
not.
hear you. Yeah, I hear you. So yeah, you're kind of talking about the iterative release process that Agile has.
Mm,
I actually haven't been able to replicate that. I'm in a similarly restrictive industry of the insurance industry. You
mm,
can't get it wrong.
yeah.
People don't want it if you got it wrong. So we have to, and they don't want a partial product as well.
Yep.
That's the difficulty that we have. What we can do and what we do is we will release a beta version that's available for testing, for user acceptance, for anything like that, all of those good things. And that generally points out any missing pieces of the puzzle that we might have or missing pieces of functionality that we might have. Generally, now we've been able to say, we've got 3/4 of it done and we'll add it in our next release,
Mm,
the final pieces that you need. And there'll be workarounds, let's say. So we'll get a lot of it through legislation, and particularly US legislation. And that is notoriously difficult to codify because it's written by people and it's written by humans who are trying to understand a situation and provide for all eventualities, and they really don't on the first round of a piece of legislation. And yet our companies and our insurance companies are expected to support that legislation. So we have a similar dilemma in a parallel industry, and are really once we had a core offering, the additions to that core offering ended up being much smaller pieces of the puzzle,
mm-hmm.
but they didn't make it less complicated. So it was always a little bit frantic. We spent 1 year, I think, working on New York paid family leave. We spent a good year doing that, but the legislation took a good 9 months to write. So we were coding and they were writing the legislation at the same time. And we're a private business, so they didn't consult us as well. They had no reason to consult us.
Of course.
We actually had to have our consultation through our customers. They would contact the states and they would contact the federal government and get that information for us. So it was even more difficult. And that's something that we continue to experience going forward. It ended up being quite a scramble at the end. But I think in industries like this, I don't think it's entirely possible to predict or to plan for things like that. And that is really where Agile comes in handy. We were able to build it as we were going and make modifications as we were going. So people could test various parts of the product. And I'm half convinced we actually helped build that legislation because we were finding gaps in the logic and passing that back to our customers who probably passed it back to the legislation writers.
Very nice. So having the similar problems that we do with needing to build out fully functional, fully fleshed out, polished products, how do you handle estimates of how long it will take to build something so that your sales team and your marketing team can be there in the ready, so that you can't just launch a product and have users or customers immediately. You have to plan for it. You have to prep for it. You have to put in the effort, and that effort often needs to be close to execution. Because if you're writing copy for something, the circumstances will have changed in a month's time that different copy is going to be required. So to avoid other teams that are non-software development or product creation, how can they be prepared at the right timings? Do you have any insight into that?
We almost were getting that a little bit backwards to how you would do it. You're getting the influx of requirements, or essentially the salespeople and marketing people saying, "I can sell your product if this was in it."
Mm-hmm.
And this tended to be how our product was built and how it was sold over the years and how it reached that critical mass. And my own take on it is we would see things that we thought should be in the product, and we would really test it out at a user group. So there's actually a yearly, and we're probably moving to twice yearly user group with our largest customers. And that's already when you have a large customer base.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that base, I think you have to rely on the balancing act between the existing customers, keeping them happy, keeping their business running, and the generation of new business. So balancing those two aspects of product design, I think that's where a product owner really comes in very handy to manage that.
Yeah.
And they will be the one who everybody bombards, sales, marketing, the CEO, everybody will be bombarding that person saying, can I get this in the product? When can I get it? And they'll give you a one-liner, of this piece of functionality. Somebody needs it, or there's a big user base that needs it. Let's get it done and make it happen. And that tends to be how products are built in young companies. It's purely market driven, because if you come up with an idea that nobody wants to buy, then you shouldn't really build that, or it'd be a big chance to build it as well.
Yeah.
I think the usual generation of ideas, crowd-based input is really helpful. And not always, but it is helpful for generation of ideas that are actually saleable. Because of course, in a small business, you're going to have to, balance up every step you make with in a cost benefit analysis and ratio, or gut feeling even. There's got to be some sort of a balancing act versus the effort that it would take to actually implement something. So that one person for 9 months was tens of thousands of dollars. It's a lot of investment. And if it doesn't work out, or no new company wants to buy your product because of it, and it's the reason you're doing it is to maintain your existing customers, it's got to be worth it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So let's say you're coming in to be our Agile coach at my team. What are our first few steps? What are the first things that we need to do together?
Oh Lord. I interview people. I almost interview people. I would ask every single detail about your company, about the current way things are done, the current people that are there. How do things tend to get done today? I'm really trying to plot a path to a better way of doing things. Every move that I think any company needs to make, and really, really in particular small companies, you can't afford a mistake, is to adjust very slightly rather than the big bang theory of throwing things out there and changing in one day. I think it's a very slow process compared to that. You don't have the money, you don't have the people, you can't stop work. A lot of these things require you to spend a week or 2 or 3 just learning about the process and trying it out. And I know a lot of companies and a lot of workplaces can't actually do that. So it's a bit unfeasible for below a certain level of company, I think, for a lot of people. You got to get things done first.
Yeah.
So my first question to you would be then, what is your tolerance for not getting things done for how long? How long can you afford not to get things done for?
0. It seems like everything is already taking us longer than any of us would like.
Yes. And that's the other thing about estimates. They're estimates. They're not actualities. They're not reality. When you need to modify something along the way, that adds to the estimate. That adds more time, more review time. Maybe you got to retest it. You got to send it out in front of people again. So the iterative nature doesn't always whittle down in a funnel to a perfect product. It can remain at a certain stage of the process. There's a couple of different methods actually that I've started branching out into. There's a methodology called jobs to be done. That's actually from Google. You're probably familiar with it. Yeah. And there's another one from the UX school of thinking, which is design thinking and design sprints. They are building a whole product or a feature of a product in a week. And I had recently the pleasure of attending spending a few days doing that as well. And it was really, really interesting. And I don't think there's an ideal product, but I think there's a good enough product to go to market with. I think spending the time to get something polished and perfect and then have it not sell is also a troubling point at which one can get stuck.
Yeah.
So, if you can get something to 80% that somebody will buy, why not just build to 80%? And this is really from the front end. It's to stop any design. The design sprints are really around stopping you getting stuck, going around in circles, trying to decide what kind of flow to have, where to place a button on a screen. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much. It makes a slight difference, but it doesn't. You shouldn't maybe have meetings about it for a month, which I've seen happen in the past.
Yeah. There's going to be a couple of points where I end up silent as I'm trying to digest what you're saying. So I'm using this as a free consultation as much as to record the episode.
I'll send you my bill. I thought you were bored, to be honest. So we need to. Yeah, I love my subject, and I'm actually quite agnostic about using just Scrum. I don't think there's one tool for the job. I think there's many tools for the job. I think there is a reason to have waterfall. There's a reason to have agile. There's a reason to have design thinking, and it's picking the right tool for the right job. I think is a really important thing to do. I don't think there's any one method that you should use. I think we should be using maybe a mix of methods, and then really to suit the environment as well. You got to suit the environment. You got to suit the company. You got to suit the people. You got to suit the process. The process is the process. It's just a process. It's just something to help everybody do their job. And if it doesn't help you do your job faster, then drop it. Like, why would you do it?
Yeah, that's what we're. We have a limited number of people. We have users with high standards. We have concerns around delivering something not up to standards of our core users of doctors. We can't really. Sorry, go ahead.
I've seen doctors scheduling software on their computers, and I've seen their computers, and it's stuck in the 90s for the most part here in Ireland anyway.
That's true, but they use those through requirements of either the hospitals or the practices they're working in. Our product is for their personal use on their own personal phones. So the chances of them putting up with something that looks like something that they would have to use for scheduling is less than zero.
This thing actually is this. You should look into design sprints, because that sounds like something that you'd like then, because the last day of the sprint is where you show it to potential customers or potential buyers or existing customers, and they will walk you through what they like or don't like about it, and then the next day you edit it and you change it again. And all of this is done in a prototyping fashion where you don't actually build any of the software, but you get the look and feel right.
Yeah, that's I'm familiar with the Sprint book, the Jake Knapp. We have not actually done one. I would love to. Of course, we have to have all the people in the room for the entire week that are needed, and that's one of the challenges that we have. Is our CEO Julie, she is the closest to what a product owner should be within our group, though she has consulting work that she has to do, which is keeping us afloat as we're bootstrapped mostly. So we do not get her full time, unfortunately, and it would be a terrible thing not to have her in the room for that full week. So as much as I want to do one, we're going to have to wait until we've gotten a bit more momentum to do it, but absolutely cannot wait to do that. Especially as we want to begin iterating on the product and trying different elements, as opposed to the way that they've changed, but not super drastically from some of the things that we got through our first user interviews a couple of years ago, actually. Now, there's been a lot of small iteration changes, but core changes like what I would like to see us do in a design sprint, we haven't released enough yet to actually justify that. So that's, we're constantly trying to help ourselves move faster. And really the only thing that I can do is continue to try to remove waste. Unless there's something else that I'm missing.
Talk me through your process. What do you do right now? How do you find out what your new features should be, and how do you refine them, and how do you move them through?
Yeah, so big thing is, so Julie knows our users because that was her job before, was the head of global digital marketing at a pharmaceutical company. And so her job was to sell to doctors.
Yeah. You see, my current CEO was a salesperson for our major competitor and said, I can do it better. So we actually had to de-invite him to our design sprint because he's in sales. He just wants to sell a product. And he wants all of the features in it, every single feature you can possibly think of, because he's a salesperson and he doesn't want to tell anybody that a feature doesn't exist in our product. So you can kind of get stuck a little bit with building too many things. And that is one thing I kind of warn you guys about. If we've done it, we did it already. So I would like to warn other people to not do it, is go down too many paths. We put ourselves down a lot of paths now, and we're paying for that debt. We're paying that debt daily now. Not in the way our product was designed, but in how it was executed, how we got our ideas in, and where they came from, and the vetting process for those ideas, vetting them against actual potential customers. Because like that, a customer will also tell you, I want more features. When really do they? So the jobs to be done kind of scales that back. What do you actually need to do? The jobs to be done methodology is probably a really good one to take there to figure out what you need to do over what you could potentially do. I joined my company there 2 years ago and they had 10,000 Jira tickets open. And I said, are you really going to do all of those things? Well, can we close a few? And they were so resistant. And people are very resistant to saying, we're not going to do something. I said, we've got 10 people now at the time, and we're never going to get through 10,000 tickets, and we get a bunch of them every day. Pick a road. We need to pick a road to go down and stick to that road, or, stick near that road at the very least, and not try and build all the highways at once.
Yeah, sure. No, so as part of the NDRC Accelerator program, one of the big sections of it was based around some jobs to be done. And we used that while we were defining what the product would be. We've got our section for content discovery. We've got sections for content sharing, which is our collections. We have the peer-to-peer communications, which is our groups, which we're still in the process of finalizing, which should be out in the next week, along with our Android version finally. So it's not that we're adding on additional large chunks. It's as we begin to use. So, we did a bunch of testing of groups within our team. And it was quite obvious quite quickly that we had a few flaws in the way we thought it should work. That, until it was built enough to use, it was really hard to realize just how annoying some of the things that we thought were necessary were not. And I don't know how we would have known that until we had actually interacted with it. So I'm not saying anything necessarily good or bad about that, but it's one of those things that I just wish I knew how to only work on the right things and do those faster.
Yeah.
As opposed to everybody else.
There's no magic. There's no magic bullet. I think that's the learning curve, and that is, that's part of why your competitive advantage, isn't it? That you spent the time and the money to go through that learning curve. So you can't really get around a lot of it. I think we've had some similar issues where I currently work again still, around, how do you build something that we don't know what it looks like at the end? We've never seen one of these things before. So we've had similar things with, how the trying to build an ERD when your customer doesn't know what an ERD is or anything like that, that it holds together. But once this is set in stone, in our particular industry, we actually we work based off Salesforce, and that's quite restrictive. So once you actually have a design in place, you're stuck with that design forever. You can't do that. So once that's committed to the framework, to the managed package as it's called in Salesforce, you can't actually change that structure.
What's an ERD?
An enterprise relationship diagram.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't use jargon.
No, it's fine to learn it. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what it is. And there are so many acronyms in the different industries. I remember, so Fran and I worked together at Symantec. My first week or two at Symantec, I heard so many different acronyms. I wasn't sure if I was not as smart as I thought I was because I didn't know all the acronyms in the industry, or if they were Symantec acronyms and it was half and half.
That was a distinctive learning curve. I think there was a cheat sheet 4 pages long of acronyms.
There was a I think it was a team site page. It wasn't even so that was an older wiki style document. Well, I don't even. It wasn't Confluence. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it was bad. It was like a really old SharePoint from 20 years ago.
SharePoint. That's what it was. It was a SharePoint. Yeah.
Terrible system.
Anyway.
Don't build one of those anyway. That's what I can say.
Sorry, you were saying, so if you're going to build an ERD and they don't know what that is.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about building a product and you don't really know how to put it together at a nuts and bolts level, like you know what the functionality is, but you're not a medical professional. You don't work in that industry. So, you don't know what they do every day in their job. And sometimes other people will just tell you what they've seen before as well. So getting people to use a product in a new way or a new way of using a product, remember when the iPod came out and it just had no buttons on it. It had a wheel and one button, and everybody was kind of going, what the hell is that? But it's amazing, and it was groundbreaking technology. And once people used it, they found it wasn't that scary at all. And it wasn't a huge learning curve. So minimizing the learning curve, I think, is probably the best thing to do in this day and age, because instead of walking people through a process, especially when you first sign up to a site, instead of walking them through the process should be so simple and intuitive that they know how to use it anyway. They've never seen it before, but they still know how to use it.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that we changed from the initial designs was our sign-up flow, because we realized that we'd made it too hard. We thought about our needs first of all the elements that would make it easier to serve the user, and didn't think enough about how, the user is already curious enough to want to try to use the app. But if we keep putting barriers in front of them, that we're going to keep losing them. So we iterated that process, and that was great.
Yeah, I mean, you see that with, I think it was Dropbox. They had the same thing where they had like a sign-up business model where they gave a certain percentage away for free, and then for everything else you had to pay for. So the majority of the user base is X amount of people who aren't paying. But the ones who are getting value from it are the business users, then the 2% that actually pay the money. They're the ones that actually pay for almost everybody else. But you need the other 98% to generate the interest in the platform. and the usage of the platform and the sharing from the platform. So people would share Dropbox links with me years ago, and I couldn't open them because I wasn't a member of Dropbox. So, you have to be a member, and then once you shared from Dropbox, you would go and you would sign up to become a member, but you weren't going to pay any money. You just wanted to get the link that somebody sent you. So it's thinking really, really understanding customers and the people who use it and the psychology behind it, I think, is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Because if it causes you more work, or any work at all, actually, if it feels like work to open an app or to share something, or to, not be able to share something, then that's something that, people don't like, because it's not seamlessly integrated into your life. That there's no separation really between work and life. It's not a work-life balance anymore. It's a work-life integration, especially for professionals like medical professionals.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think understanding that about your customers, I think in particular your customers would be those kind of people who don't switch off, who like to learn all the time, who need all of the information and need it all at their fingertips. So whatever way you can do in your product to provide that, I think is probably where they'd like to see your product heading in a general sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's I 100% agree. And we do actually have conversations like that about, will this make it easier? Is adding this extra element will make it a little easier to understand in some ways, but does it add more mental overhead that just isn't worth it? So, we're always weighing those things up, and I think we do a pretty good job of that. Still doesn't make us move faster.
No. Well, to get back to your original conversation, that I know we were this is what I'm talking about with my take on things and what I'm learning every day, is you can't really pick out that putting in this process is a good solution it'll solve all your problems. And making people think like a team is going to solve all your problems. It's not. It's kind of a combination of everything. It's a holistic view of the whole ecosystem. And I think that's the really difficult part. And I don't think that's being created yet. I think when people have done it successfully, they've done one part of it really successfully. So like Apple, like that, they took their product and they made it excellent, essentially. And their salespeople sold it excellently. And if you subscribe to that, and they did. But they've done other things that weren't so excellent, and things like you'd see this in Amazon, for example. So they put out a lot of products, a lot of really successful things, but the parts you don't really hear about are the really unsuccessful things. They spend a lot of time experimenting and putting things out in the wild and seeing if it works, seeing what catches. I think that's quite the new way of doing it. It's called an adhocracy, if you've ever heard that.
No, I haven't. I like that.
Yeah, so part of their company organization is a bit of an adhocracy. They create teams. So Scrum, you've got stable teams. They serve one product or one feature, and that stays static, because if you change a team, from management thinking, if you change a team, you've got to form and storm and norm and perform all over again. So if you change any one of those variables, by traditional thinking, you have to kind of start all over again. In an adhocracy, you take people with particular skills, but multi-talented skills. So you can have a project manager who can also develop, or overlapping skills, I guess is a better word for that. And they form project teams, and they will be the ones who seize an opportunity. So in Agile, you're organized around excellence, I guess, and producing a product as fast as possible. But it's also got to be slightly, well, you lose a little excellence when you go for speed. So it's balancing those three things: speed and excellence, time, and all that kind of jazz. And if you go and organize your teams around opportunities, it's just a different take on things. And this has no real methodology around it. You're not sticking to any one methodology. You can use waterfall with it, but it's just, waterfall is used in terms of having a high level plan. You've got to build this product. You've got to build X amount of features. You got to get those features together and then pick where your stopping point is. And, after your project plan, you've got your UAT and your QA and all that kind of fun stuff to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of in general, everybody knows in general what your project looks like, but the details, they can move and they can change. So you're still kind of working a little bit agile, but you're not releasing anything until the very end of the project, which could be a couple of months. So you can still work in small sprints, or you can work in a waterfall methodology. But either way, the people on your team are agile. So the people on the team just make sure that they get a bunch of stuff done every single day. And you're all moving towards the same goal, which is one of the fundamental reasons that you are a team. Everybody can see the end. Everybody's invested in it. They actually all have stock, I believe, in Amazon. And that's one of the reasons people are so into Amazon and so enthusiastic, a little bit cultish, but they are what it is. What it is. So they form these teams around a market opportunity or a business opportunity or some kind of targeting. We need to build a product to solve for this problem. Let's go try do it in a really fast time frame. And if we fail, we'll just forget about it and move on because we did it really fast. It didn't work out. People are either going to pick it up or not, you know. And you can find out quick whether you've failed or not, whether the product has, stickiness. It's going to stick in the market, whether people are going to take it up. So I think they had Amazon Mobile at one stage. And when people are talking about Amazon, their excellence, they don't mention all the failures. They just mention the successes.
True.
So I think learning about how to fail and how to fail fast is a really good way to do it, rather than how to win fast. Because I think even if you built the most excellent product, you could still fail. So how do you do that as fast as possible? That's the real question.
That's really good. I know I'm going to listen to this episode a number of times. It's a lot to take in there.
This keeps me up at night. Good Lord.
Well, I'll definitely love to have you back if you find this enjoyable.
I do. I could talk for days on this. I swear I could talk for days.
Yeah, I could talk to you about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different options. I guess it's just try one and see which one works. Try them all.
We keep trying because nothing is perfect. We just try to keep making those smaller changes that keep moving us forward further and further.
Sure.
But, if you've got high standards and want to be great, but you also want to move fast, it's that triangle. Good, fast, cheap. Startups, unfortunately, don't have loads of extra money laying around. So.
This is it. That's the reason that I actually just finished a course on entrepreneurship, and really what you want to do is create the most valuable product with the most features for the least amount of money, and that's how you win.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I can't remember who I was saying it to, but just that, we need to figure out how we can ship more value faster. That's what I really mean by faster. I don't necessarily mean more lines of code, more features, just more value.
Well, if you had to have your consumers of the product actually rate which features were most useful to them, would that be illuminating? I bet it would.
Well, see, I think groups which required a load of work up to this point as a foundation. So the foundation was necessary so that groups could be built on top of it. I think groups will be one of the things that brings a great deal of value to people, but until it's in their hands, that's speculation, I suppose. But it's based on user interviews and user understanding. It's not based on, licking your finger and sticking it up in the air to see which way the wind's blowing. But it still needs to be released. So
yeah. I mean, that's the investment, and that's the piece of the puzzle. That's the extremely difficult part. How do you stay afloat while all of that is happening? You got to get to that stage where you have the foundations built, and that can be years as well. Before you even build the really good stuff that makes the product take off. So people don't see all the sweat and tears that went into the background of it. They just see the finished product and think it was luck that got them there. I think that, the Apple example, I don't know how many years they put into research around this, but it could have been 10 years of work and 10 years of millions and millions of dollars for all we know, which would explain the price of an iPhone. But
tell me about it.
It would, but because it brings up such value, you're gonna pay the most tolerable limits and probably beyond it to get that value.
Yeah.
I know I do.
Yeah. So what's your talk going to be about at Ali? That's the Agile Lean Ireland conference on the 26th of April at Croke Park here in Dublin, Ireland.
I have ended up just attending this year, actually.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, unfortunately. But it is a 2-day event this year, so I'm really looking forward to that and really just seeing what kind of knowledge I can come out from there, with and bring it back to my company and to the people I interact with. So, I'm always looking for new pieces of information. I think getting stuck on one methodology is probably a bad idea. And I think I don't think anybody's got the right answer. I think they found the right answer for them. One of the things everybody wants to do is just copy what somebody else did in their company, and re-engineer that in their own place and have the same success then result from it. But it doesn't quite work that way, because the other company has a causal ambiguity. You don't really know what caused their success. It's not simply Agile. It never really is just simply doing one thing. It's always a bunch of other things, and unpicking what the defining factor was. That's the difficulty everybody has today. There's also like a path dependency. So the decisions you make today will affect what happens in 10 years from now. And there's nothing you can really do about that. But also at the same time, it makes it harder to imitate your product, because the troubles and trials and tribulations you're going through now are what are going to make your product successful, essentially. They're going to be non-imitable. You're not going to be able to imitate it. So hopefully
because even if they copy what you've done at this point, they don't know what you know for what comes next.
Exactly, because you don't release your failures. You release your successful product. You release all the successful things you did, and you might have refactored things, and you might have made learnings along the way. They can't re-engineer that. You can't backwards engineer a process. You can't backwards engineer the things that got you to success. I don't think it's possible now at this point in time to do that. And I think it's there are some things you can't avoid. It's like learning how to ride a bike. You can't avoid toppling over at some point. You can never just read a book and say, I'll replicate that and go out and do it. You have to go through the process. Sometimes you just have to go through the process.
Nice. And apologies, it's the 25th of April and the 26th. So that's a Thursday and a Friday. I got confused by the banner on your LinkedIn. I didn't see the 2018. So sorry about that.
Yeah. But, no problem at all.
They missed out on a good speaker, but at least you get the opportunity to just listen and learn this year. So
exactly. Yeah. I found it very difficult to do both. Yeah.
I'm sure you were thinking about your talk all the way up until it, and then an adrenaline dump afterwards.
Oh my God. You know what, though? I wrote that presentation and I was still editing it the same day because things were still changing. I was trying to explain at that particular presentation in that point in time what we'd done and what we changed and how we'd done it, the steps we'd taken to change minds internally. So changing minds is much, much harder than changing processes. And I'm kind of leaning towards now changing team minds, and then if you picture like the team level as a circle, and then an encompassing circle would be the managers of those team members, or the functional heads, or somebody else, project managers or whatever that you might have in your company. And a third level out from that is all your sales people and your business people and your support people and your CEO. And all three levels kind of need to be thinking along the same lines, and often aren't. So the values and not the mission statement, it's such an old phrase to say for a company or product. It's where are you all heading, and are you all thinking about the same things and same ways to get there? And by that I mean kind of if you're building a product and you're building it and you have a vision already in your head, you have a skeleton of an idea of what this product should look like and perhaps what it should feel like. And your business people in sales will have a different idea of what that should look and feel like. And then your end users will also have a third idea of what that looks and feel like. So getting all of that aligned is kind of important, I think.
And how do you go about that through those user days and the design sprints and things like that, or are there other techniques that you can recommend?
I think Agile is one of the team-based ways of doing that. So when you roll out a Scrum process, you're rolling out a change process, essentially. You're rolling out something that gets everybody on the same page. And it doesn't do it on its own, because when you make decisions about a product and where to go with that product, you kind of need to know where the CEO wants the company going and where they want the product going. And then also help the salespeople understand where that is going as well. So the way your product looks today externally is completely different from what it looks like internally, because you've probably got some adjustments and modifications and enhancements already in the running. And then 3 months and 6 months from now, it's a completely different product again. So how do you keep all of those things together? One of the things that you can do is you roll out Scrum. You've all got a really good understanding and a vision of where the product is going, and that's what your product owner does. They're the person who's supposed to figure out. Excuse me, I got a cough actually. I don't usually talk this much. I lost my voice in my first couple of months at this company, actually, because I'd never spoken so much in my life. From rolling out values and making sure people were on the same page. Gone to dusk on the phone. So yeah, it's you're rolling that out. Your product owner provides you with a vision of where the product is going, both at the level of a sprint, be it 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, or whatever. They tell you what kind of feature or what you're kind of working towards, and then they'll also have a longer term vision for that product. And all of that, they kind of need to get that CEO in line and make sure the CEO knows what they're selling. You know, they're going around, they're maybe going to conferences or, the nice places where you're going to find your customers. That's where the CEO ends up going and doing all the press associated with it. So they should have a fairly good idea of where your product is going. The harder part is getting that idea out of them and onto paper in a succinct form that everyone can make the same decision. So you'll see this in case studies like Southwest Airlines and even Amazon, actually. They have their 10 values and principles that they work towards. So they are relentlessly working on behalf of the customer to make the customer's life better. And then they actually also have what's called the 10 principles are actually stacked one above the other. So if you need to make a decision, anyone at any level of the company can make that decision because it will relate to one of the values. So I think they call them leadership principles, actually. So they have this customer obsession, and everyone's a leader in that company. And what does that mean? That you are, you got to be right, and that you're always learning, and that you're insisting on the highest standards, and that you're also thinking big at the same time. But if you have to weigh up one against the other, that's actually an ordering system as well. So yes, the customer is first, and yes, you've got to think big. But if thinking big comes, does it come before or after the highest standards? So there's your excellence. So you're weighing up against, do I need this at 100%, or do I need it? Do I need more features? So that's the scope and time variables that you can juggle.
Yeah.
But it gives everybody in the company then a guideline to work towards. So if you need to make a decision, you don't need to wait for the CEO to make the decision, because everyone can make a decision and can make an educated guess about what the CEO wants, because the CEO would have been involved in having these principles laid out. So if you all know what those principles are and what those rules of engagement, we can call them, are, then everybody should be able to make a decision based on those rules. So here's where our product is going, here's where our company is going, and here's where our product is going. And here are the rules that we're all going to follow and are going to affect every single decision that we make. Because, costs are going to be involved in these decisions as well. So if you do want to satisfy the customer, but at the same time, you want to keep excellence up there, you want to have the most things, but you also want to simplify things, so how do you juggle all those things? Put them down and rank them and see which one comes above the other. And it'll be a terribly difficult exercise, but I imagine. But once you've got them down, that will be the foundation for success, I think.
Huh. I'm definitely coming back to listen to this again.
I'm giving you an MBA in one go. You guys.
Yeah, I definitely want to have you back.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Since we've already done this, it's already been an hour. Can you believe that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I can't actually. In my throat.
Okay. Feels like we just sat down. Well, before we wrap up, what would you ask anyone in the audience to do? What should they do?
I would ask them to really just think about the system holistically. It's not one thing, it's not one technique, it's not one process, and it's not one framework. One thing doesn't change the whole system, but one thing will change that part of the system, which will then enable you to change another part of the system. But you've got to work on the whole thing. I think it's really important.
Nice. And that sounds like what our UX guy has been actually advocating within the build of the product.
Oh, Lord, promote that, man.
So it's not even about the processes. It's about making sure that holistically every change we make is integrated within the entire product. So, yeah, no, absolutely. He's fantastic. And as is everyone on our team.
Yeah. I think the hardest part is nailing down your leaders, because salespeople do not want to pick one path and stick to it. They want to sell everything. So you're probably the hardest problem are going to be people.
Definitely. How can people reach you?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am all over the place on social media. So any channel that you find me on, feel free to reach out to me. Okay. I am Smyth, and Agile Coach will probably be next to my name. And just click those buttons if you need to message me or ask me any questions. I'm very willing to help. I love to help others. Awesome.
I'll add all your links into the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dave. It was really pleasurable for me to have somebody listen to me for an hour talking.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, remember, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.